4 organisations and 5 guests who are here to sort of build on that conversation that Barry's laid the foundation for, which is how do we grow from 0 to 100. We've asked 4 different organisations to look at this, and it doesn't just have to be about growing, groups or growing sites. It can be, how do you expand as an organisation from maybe a voluntary organisation to an organisation that has a member of staff or several members of staff. So it's just so we've got some organisations at different stages of growth and development, using different models to sort of just come and share their experience of how they've how they're traveling, where they've come from, where they've got to, how they've done it, what's working, what's not working. And rather than me explain who they are, I'll let them explain who they are. So the first round of questions, guys, just going to come to you one at a time, just for a minute or so, just for you to introduce yourself, give us your name of your organisation, and a simple overview of what your organisation does, so we can orientate ourselves in that. As always, look out for the chat box. There's links shared in there. Do share your own links, comments and questions. And it's a really rich resource which you can save at the end. Loads of great links in there. So I'm going to start, excuse me. I'm going to start with the very simple question. Who the hell are you and what does your project do? And I'm going to start with Mark and then come to David and Ben. So Mark Burns, founder of the Man Walk. Are you there, Mark? Seems like it's just turning his... Looks like you might have a bit of a technical issue there. I'm going to get to David and Ben, and we'll work out what's happening with Mark.
Yeah, thanks, Glenn. Hi, everyone. It's David here, David Point. I'm in Sydney. And the men's table, we're groups of men who meet over dinner once a month. The model is about a perpetual group who commit to long-term relationship. And the idea is to have conversations about what's going on in each other's lives and talk about how people really feel. The first table started in 2011. I'll hand back over to Ben.
Okay, I'm Ben, and I could really say what he said. So yeah, we form groups of men, go out, have a meal, so it gives them something to do, and they talk about the highs and lows of their lives. We believe in peers before professionals. So 12 men sitting around the table, you've got a group of 12 experts at being men. It also stops them, the reticence of going and seeing a professional, seeing a doctor. And that's what we do. Yeah, we started first table June 2011.
Right, and how would you mark where you are on your journey right now? Just like a measure of size, how would you measure that?
Yeah, well, we had one table up until the beginning of 2019. So we just had 11 of the original 12 guys were meeting once a month on the third Wednesday. And David gave me a call and said, let's do something about men's work. At the end of last year, we had 15 tables. I mean, we've now got 18 tables with 2 more forming. And obviously COVID has slowed us down a little bit.
So, right. So you've grown from 1 to nearly 20 in the less than 2 years.
Yeah, 18 months or so.
One table for several years.
Yeah.
Right, and which is one of the reasons why I wanted you in this conversation, because you've obviously gone through this period of clear growth in 18 months, and it'd be good to understand how that happened. Mitch, can I come to you?
G'day, Glenn. Hi, everyone. My name is Mitch McPherson, and I'm down here in Hobart, Tasmania. It's about 9 degrees today, so very chilly, and actually glad to be indoor and got the heater on, so hopefully you don't hear the heater through the computer. I'm from Speak Up, Stay Chatty. Stay Chatty works to promote positive mental health and prevent suicide via normally conversations about mental health and encouraging people to seek help when they're going through a difficult time. I'm sure we'll talk about story in a moment. I started the charity about 7 years ago, and I'll get into that a little bit later on. But our team now, we have a state government funded schools program that works in all high schools across Tasmania. We have a sports program that's partnered with the Australian Drug Foundation and their Good Sport Healthy Minds program. And then we also have workplace and community presentations that we deliver. I deliver a lived experience. And then we've also got some staff that run community mental health led presentations as well around help seeking, supportive conversations, etc. So basically a brand, speak up, stay chatty, little pair of shorts, and yeah, we raise awareness and get on board as many initiatives around mental health and suicide prevention as we can.
Right, and how would you measure your growth? Would it be turnover or number of staff? How could you measure it from where you started to where you are now?
Yeah, well, starting as I'm a glazier by trade, and I started it just with a passion after losing my brother, and thought, you know, this could be something big. Tassie had the second highest rated suicide in Australia back then. We still do now from the last stats that I checked. But now, you know, we've got 5 full-time staff. We've got $1 million state funding a couple of years ago for our school program, a youth reference group of 12 young people across the state. So, yeah, it's and we partnered with Relationships Australia Tasmania, who turn over 10 million. So a really well-established org there. So our growth is in 6 years. Yeah, certainly probably not where I ever imagined us to be, but certainly proud of the work we've done to get where we are.
Great. And so so from voluntary to 5 full-time staff, and the $1 million, is that over a year, several years?
4 years.
Yeah, so more than $250,000 a year.
Yep. And just adding Tas Community Fund has funded our sports program, which is about 250, yeah, over about 2 years as well. So
yeah.
Yeah.
Great, excellent. Gives us a sense of the size, different sizes of organisations and different stages of growth. Thanks.
For sure.
Thanks, Mitch. Mark, are you able to go now?
I'm back again. Am I coming through okay now? Sorry, guys.
Go ahead.
Great. My name's Mark Burns from the Man Walk. So they're an organisation that basically helps men find a walk near them or start their own walk. We'll get into the story a little bit, I'm sure, as we move through the speakers. But yeah, we're an incorporated association, so a non-for-profit that started in Kiama when I started to change things around and go for a walk in the morning, and we've grown from 3 walks last June to now having 71 walks around the country. So it's been a bit of an explosion, which we weren't ready for, but we've chased our tail reasonably well over the last 6 months, and I think we're putting some good processes in place so that we can, you know, connect and continue to grow.
That's great, Mark. I said it last time we spoke, I think, until coronavirus came along, you were the most viral thing in Australia.
I took that. I like it. Yeah, we certainly maybe even quicker than coronavirus. So yeah, we've been hanging on for dear life since, and around finding some measure now.
Great. And Mark, I don't know if other people are getting this, but we're hearing you, but your connection's a bit patchy. You might want to try turning your camera off and seeing if that improves it. Not that we don't want to see your face, my friend. Just that we want to really hear what you're saying. Maybe give that a go and see if we just get in the microphone.
Yeah. Can do.
Great, thanks, Mark. So that's 0 to 70 plus groups in a really short period of time after, I'm sure Mark will talk about it, but after a bit of viral media coverage, the groups went viral in the last 12 months or so. So we've got then, who haven't we come to yet? I apologise. It's Tom.
Tom.
Beautiful Tom Docking. Tom Docking.
Yep.
That's Group Inc. How are you, Tom? What's your story?
Thanks, Glenno. Yeah, Jojo stopped screaming now, so it's a good time. Dad's Group is the organisation that I run, and my wife and I kind of kicked that off when we had our first child. We specifically look and target new fathers and families. When we went through that initial transition ourselves into parenthood, fatherhood for me, there was a lot of fear, anxiety, shock, and unknowns. And that journey has been one that we've just been able to listen over thousands of conversations over the last 5 or 6 years has been replicated in the words of many men, whether they're teenagers becoming new fathers or 60-year-olds, and we've got that whole spectrum in between. And yeah, the organisation is called Dad's Group. We also run an event called Man with the Pram, which we launched as a national event on Father's Day last year. And that was really successful in terms of getting new fathers together. What we aim to do is really connect new fathers in that antenatal space all the way through to maybe 2 or 3 years old. The children are 2 or 3 years old. But it also attracts a lot of new fathers who have children all the way up to 20 years old as well, who just want to sow back into the community and be part of that. From a, I guess, where have we grown to from the first kind of Dad's Group, so to speak? We've established well over 100 groups now. Probably it's become, as we've grown, we probably realise that's probably not the best metric for measuring our impact, but more events, and we've done over 1,000 events as well, because yeah, there's a number of different reasons I can go into that. And we've also been able to collaborate with global organisations and the federal government, Movember, and those types of organisations to be able to trial and test and iterate the programs that we've been doing. So we've been on a number of different types of growth, social innovators programs, and also with the federal government on a number of different initiatives working nationally and also in the states in different capacities. So our engagement is around working with hospitals, councils, and community organisations, but again, specifically supporting new fathers, connecting them with each other, and generally it's very casual, dads and babies having a coffee at a park or walking down to the beach or meeting at a cafe. So that's what we do. Yeah, just wanted to say thank you. This space is amazing, and I also want to acknowledge obviously the traditional custodians of this country and the land that we're walking on, but also the many men who have come before us and been doing this work possibly for hundreds of years in their own little way in their own towns, and we're now living in a time where things can grow and scale. And I think, yeah, my one point today will just be around, you know, the approach that they had is the approach that we need to have, and that is connecting with one person and helping one person and letting that grow from there. And that's, yeah, there's a lot of shoulders that we're standing on doing the work that we're doing, as most of you will agree. So thanks.
Right. Thanks, Tom. Thanks for being here. So that gives us a sort of a sense. We've got 4 very different groups thriving in different ways. And then we can measure that in terms of the number of groups or the number of men and events that are reached, the number of turnover, the number of staff. And now I want to give each of you an opportunity to tell us your story. Tell us your story of growth. Tell us sort of like, take us back to the beginning of how you founded it, and then take us on a journey of the growth, and tell us about some of the key transition points along the way. So I'm going to give you maybe 6 minutes or so with this one, so you got more time to sort of really explore and tell your story. I'll go in a slightly different order. I think I'll come to Mark first, see how he's going with the microphone, then Mitch, then Tom, and then men's table fourth. So Mark, how we going? Tell us your story.
Great, thanks Glenn. Thanks everybody. Apologies for the lack of video. I'm down the far south coast in the bit of the wilderness, so the old Wi-Fi isn't fantastic down here, but hopefully I'm coming through nice and clear on the audio. The Man Walk started in my hometown of Kiama early in 2019 when I made the decision to change around my daily and morning routine and get up for a walk. I was staying up a bit too late of an evening time and having a couple of beers and getting through my paperwork and just going to bed around midnight and not waking up, full of beans and hitting my straps. So my lovely wife said, how about I, get to bed a bit earlier and get up with the sun and go for a walk and a coffee and just get my head right for the day, which I did. And I was enjoying that very much for a few months through the first part of 2019, listening to various podcasts and walking around the beautiful harbour in Kiama. I was then away camping with a couple of other families who happened to be away with the same ones this weekend, which is a coincidence actually. And a few of the boys said, well, can we come along on the morning walk with you? So yeah, of course I said, and we grew from 2 or 3 of us to 6 or 8, and that's how we cruised along for the middle part of last year, one of the boys moved north to Wollongong, which is half an hour north of Kiama, and started a group there. We decided to start a Facebook page. We realised that we had something, pretty cool going on in terms of a nice, casual, easy way for blokes to get together for a walk and a talk, outside of family time, away from other bits and pieces. And so we, in the space of about half an hour, we'd come up with the name The Man Walk. We'd come up with our motto, Walk, Talk, Support. Started a Facebook page, and again, went along fairly steadily like that through March, April, May last year. A lovely bloke from Coolangatta, Marty Thompson, reached out through Facebook and said he had some men in need up there that he worked with in his role, and he'd love to start a Coolangatta Man Walk, which happened. And then middle of June last year, might have been June 19, we'd formalised our processes even more by registering as an incorporated association, taking out insurance so the blokes were protected if they hurt themselves or anything, although I walked. One of our posts on a Thursday night, which wasn't anything of any different content than we normally would. Just said, any men in the Wollongong area feel like it's tough and want to go for a walk and talk tomorrow morning, see you by 45 on the beach. So that was Thursday night. Woke up Friday morning doing all kinds of beeping and alerts and those kinds of things. And by mid-morning, it had been viewed 3 million people, shared 7.5 times already by the next day. So for no particular reason that we can identify, the Facebook algorithm picked it up and gave it a shove. And that was on the Thursday. On the Saturday, we ended up on the front page of the Wollongong local papers and on some New South Wales and Sydney 1,000 times already by the Facebook algorithm, picked it up and gave it to local papers. And on some, the Tuesday, we were on the Today Show live from Kiama, speaking about what we're trying to achieve. And then between June and September last year, we had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of approaches via email, through our basic website we modelled together, but mainly through social media, on Facebook. And we moved from 3 to 71 walks across the country. So it's been a wild ride. Worked really hard.
So Mark's dropping in and out. I don't know if you can hear us, Mark. Okay, so I'm going to jump in. Keep trying to. We were with you up until you'd gone viral. We'd got to the stage where you're about to say something like "Today Wollongong, tomorrow the world," but then we lost you a little bit. So hopefully Mark can get back in, and we'll come to Mitch. So Mitch, tell us your story, how it began, and then how you began to grow.
Yeah. So, like, it's fair to say, to kick this off, life these days is incredibly different. Travelling and presenting and sort of working around the corporate world and dressing a lot differently to what I was when I was a tradie back in 2013. I grew up and went to an all-boys school down here in Hobart. Finished high school, got a couple of jobs, worked at Woolworths in the fruit and veg department. Didn't really know what my life had in front of me, and I realised straight out of college that I'd stuffed around too much at school and hadn't really worked out what my future was going to be. And working in a sports shop 3 days a week at the age of about 19 wasn't really going to cut it. I ended up getting a job as a glazer as an apprentice in the tradie world, and worked there for about 7 years, and thought that would be me forever. I certainly didn't like my glazing. I'd put windows in and go home and say to my wife, or my girlfriend is now my wife now, geez, I don't want to do that anymore. But I didn't have the drive or the will to get off my ass and do anything different about it. I was just going to do it, and that would be my life. I remember 2012 Christmas, had a great old time with family and friends, and then I was going back to work on the 14th of Jan 2013, and I had my first day back. I had a really cruisy day. I got home that night. I lived with my dad at a suburb called Tranmere down here in Hobart. I was downstairs having a conversation with my girlfriend, arguing about who would drive to go and get McDonald's for dinner. And then all of a sudden upstairs there was a commotion, and we learnt the incredibly devastating news. My mum had called my dad to let us know that my little brother Ty, who was 18, up at mum's place, 10 minutes from where we lived, had suicided and taken his own life. And I talk about a game changer. I love my sport and around my mates and drinking beers and love my family and stuff. But mental health was just something that I'd never ever really focused on. I'm sure I'd had bad days and I'd seen people have bad days before, but there's the stigma there where obviously we all know about the stigma, and that was a big player, especially me in the trade industry. I'd never really thought that it was important to talk about it. And now my little brother had been taken from the earth, and battled all the emotions that I'm sure we all know, and know people who have faced suicide, been touched by suicide, guilt, sadness, grief. Worked through that for the first couple of months, and then after a while, I remember I saw my mum, called in to see her, and she was an absolute mess, still 3 months on. And I remember driving home that afternoon, crying and getting physical with the steering wheel, thinking, how on earth did this happen to us? And I walked inside Dad's place and thought, right, I want to do something about it. And with a pad and pen, I came up with the idea of Speak Up, Stay Chatty, which is this little logo on the stubby holder of all things that I've got in my office. And Speak Up, Stay Chatty incorporates his name, Ty. And the reason for the footy shorts is Ty loved wearing footy shorts, and he'd wear them all the time to go out for dinner, to play footy. He'd always wear them without any undies on. So it was quite well known that Ty would quite often have his feet up on the coffee table, exposing elements of himself that we didn't want to see. I got car stickers. We got rid of a couple of thousand car stickers in the first few weeks. Facebook now has about 27,000 followers. Instagram, or you do all that stuff when you're setting up a campaign. I started to do some public speaking. I have no idea how. I did a bit of drama in high school, but people were calling me out to speak about it. I sculptured a talk that was safe and that was appropriate for every audience I was speaking to. Set it up as a charity, formed a board, partnered with Relationships Australia. They saw the work I was doing in the community, and they basically said, Mitch, do you want to leave glazing and come and work with us and grow what it is that you want to grow? And I've been full-time now for coming up to 7 years working on the charity Speak Up, Stay Chatty with RA Taz. And as I said, at the moment, I'm now a team leader, working in schools, sporting clubs. I travel the country now and share my story and speak. I often say that when I lost Ty, I felt that I knew nothing about mental health. And the main reason I started this charity is because all of a sudden I started to think about moments I'd seen him in the last couple of weeks where he just wasn't okay. And it became pretty evident to me that he was struggling, but it was my ignorance and my lack of knowledge. So that's a really big driver for me to open up the eyes and ears of many that I speak with, to look out for the signs and to have conversations and not walk in the shoes that I walk in every single day, as a lot of you would know a lot about that are on the line today. So I already told you what Stay Chatty does. I have big dreams for it to continue growing and collaborating. We've collaborated with a couple of the guys that are on the panel today in their Tasmania areas, which is really exciting. I really believe in collaboration, and no doubt talk about that later. But that's my story from tradie to public speaker, and yeah, certainly proud of the work I've done, but proud of the support that Tasmania has put in to get behind us to where we are today.
Right, thanks, Mitch. It's a really powerful story. I'm amazed, how many people there are in this this emerging men's mental health movement who have been driven by that personal experience, and it's always important to remember that behind the passion is often the pain of personal experience. And thanks for what you do. So we'll come to Mark's going to see if he can phone in, I hope, or we'll try him again in a second, see if his connection is improved. Come to Tom. Tom, what's the how did you give birth to Dad's Group, if I can use that metaphor, and what's the growth? What have the growing pains been like?
Yeah, they're good questions, and well phrased, I think. Look, as I kind of mentioned before, a bit of my story was the shock of becoming a father. I wasn't planning at the time. I was actually up on Hayman Island in Queensland on a working kind of planned 2-year trip around the world with my wife, and we just obviously got too relaxed up there and ended up being pregnant and having to you know, get a seaplane across to the doctors and then confirming that, you know, she's definitely pregnant, and all that for me was such a shock. And it just led to me, yeah, she said I didn't really talk for about 2 or 3 weeks. Just went out in the kayak every day and went fishing. And and I think the elements of shock related to a whole bunch of different things, but just predominantly that I wasn't ready for it. And I was always wanted to be a dad, but it's just this thing, you know, in talking to thousands of dads ever since in the last 5 or 6 years, it seems to be common that unless, you know, you've been planning it for a while, you kind of never feel ready. And there's this sense of, you know, I'm bringing a new life into this world. I'm somewhat responsible for this life. And there's no manual. You know, I buy a Land Cruiser Prado and they give me a manual and all these tutorials, make a baby or a new life, and you walk out of the hospital and there's nothing. And you feel, really shocked. So, but my mum's a midwife, and I'd grown up in a space where, you know, antenatal classes were talked about and I'm aware of them. But then when the experience came for me, I just was shocked that it's such a female oriented space. And there was actually, it wasn't that men weren't invited into it, but it's just that it was uncomfortable and unfamiliar and medical and clinical and all these things that, weren't comfortable for us. And all the conversations were directed towards, you know, the mother of the child. And I just saw this amazing need to be able to support, if you could support fathers through this, then they're probably going to have a better relationship in those early years of parenting, because you're equipping them with the understanding and support to help their partner and help their child. And yeah, at the time before we actually kicked off the first dads group, I went and spent some time with 2 mates who had just had little kids. And we sat there, and I was expecting to have a baby, but didn't have a baby, obviously, with me. And the experience was just incredible. It was just so relaxing, but I felt like I could learn a lot from that environment. And I grew up in Arnhem Land, an Aboriginal community, and there's this men's space men's kind of business they do up there, and women's business. And there's this really healthy space where older men and younger men get together, and there's this learning environment. And they might be hunting, or they might be sitting around the fire or whatever, but it's something that I felt that our society is somewhat lost. And with the concept of bringing a new life into this world, that's exactly what was needed, was a place where you could sit down, have a coffee or whatever's comfortable, and just listen to each other's lives. But also when that, you know, most of us have kind of a burning question that we're wanting to ask someone about one of the problems that we've had, but we'd never be comfortable asking those questions. But you actually do feel comfortable asking those questions if the environment's right. And that was the right environment for the parenting questions. You know, like we joke about it now in dad's group, saying no sleep, no money, no sex, join the club. And it's something that kind of breaks down the barriers to guys talking about it. But there is a lot of truth to all those elements around the stresses and anxiety you go through. And you know, we've been able to realise that normalising that is actually a major step in actually coping with it. So it's not about, you know, some clinical special kind of methodology that will, you know, a secret sauce or a silver bullet solution. It's just that normalisation of what they're going through. It's sharing that journey. As many of you in your different initiatives and programs would find, is that it's guys getting together and realising, oh, we're in the same boat. And I often talk about it as if, you know, the Saving Private Ryan story, where these guys have gone to war, and at the start you see they don't actually bond really well, and by the end of it they're closer than brothers. And I think what we find in these dads groups is that they, you know, they're disparate fathers. They're from different ages, genders, you know, origins. They speak different languages. Some of them have different color skin, and they're all guys who would probably never choose to be friends with each other, but through the process of sharing parenting, they have this commonality between them, which is this terribly beautiful new life, but also terribly challenging new life, and shocking realities of that life that, you know, make you get you dragged through a grueling challenge of no sleep and having to fight through your daily work as well as your relationship changes and shifts, and then that overwhelming responsibility of fathering a child and having that amazing opportunity to father a child, but also that responsibility and something that not everyone has had a fatherhood role model that they want to emulate, and some people have, and some people haven't even thought about it. So yeah, our journey has been one of really engaging that story and individual stories of the fathers and helping to facilitate that. And I think being able to do that in a way that's has low barriers to entry, allows fathers to see it's not as most of you have also probably have experienced, men's health programs can have a massive stigma around them. It's like you have to be weird or strange to do them, or you have to be categorized to do them. So for us, it's about helping guys realize the category is becoming a new father or fatherhood, and the space is there at the local cafe or park. So
Tom,
yeah,
this is beautiful. How would you say, what were the key things that took you from, having a group of dads yourself to having groups of dads? How did you shift from it being, something that you value to something that other people could have access to? What were the key things you needed to do?
Yeah, that's a great question, Glenn. I think the first step was actually research. When I say that, I mean, know what you're doing might be great, but is it something that other people want or need? Is it something that is someone else is providing already? If they're providing, are they doing an effective job of it? Have you got something new and unique to bring to the table? And for us, we just, back in 2014, there was nothing at a national level that was supporting new fathers at all, anywhere. Even today, there's only a few small initiatives, but in terms of supporting new fathers, there was nothing. And so, yeah, moving from one group to multiple our aim was always to scale social impact, if it was possible, but keep it owned by the local people, by the local fathers, by the local communities, because at the heart of it, as I shared before, that Indigenous community experience, that was really owned by them, and you could see that would unlock really beautiful environments for people to share, grow and learn and pass on wisdom, etc. And if you corporatize that, you could all of a sudden lose everything. And that's a real key element of what we've learned to be working with men, specifically new fathers, is that there's, their bullshit radar is really effective. And so as soon as you start putting in something that either makes it look like a corporate program or makes it look like something that you want them to do, it soon doesn't work very well. And I'm not sure if anyone else has had that experience before, but you want to help, but you can't let your want for growth be bigger than your want for help. And I think that's something that, we probably learn daily, weekly and yearly as well in different capacities. But for us, it was about identifying, well, who needs this support? How does this support actually work? Research, as you'll see on our website and different things, that this is supporting new fathers as men. This is supporting new infants in their development, their childhood development milestones massively, to help engage fathers with their babies. This is supporting partners, so mums and dads talk about the roles and break down those traditional role norms.
Okay.
And so, therefore, to answer that question, Glenn, we're moving from something that's kind of in the suicide prevention bucket. It's also in the child development milestone bucket and also in the domestic violence prevention bucket. So then it's going, okay, so whoever does the domestic violence prevention, are you interested in building safer communities for families and specifically for women? And then working out how we can work with them to trial, pilot and test it. So it's very much been...
Okay. So it sounds like there's a little bit there of trying to marry what it is the blokes need and what will work for them with what it is potential partners and funders need, and seeing if you can make create an overlap, without ever losing sight of what it is the dads actually need and want.
Yeah, that's right. Making sure that what you are doing is important to who, find out who it's important to, and then work with them to address those key issues. Sorry for the background sound. I've got two.
No, that's real. It's authentic. It's true dadding, unless you put on some kind of tape recorder in the background to make it look authentic.
I will do that in about 15 years when they've grown up.
Yeah, I got it. Yeah, you should come with like bits of baby food off your hat and stuff like that. Great. Okay, Tom, I could listen to you speak for half an hour, but I'm going to need to move on and get men's table involved. So, guys, you can work out how you're going to do your double act here. But I guess founder stories are really interesting. And I think I'm really most interested. Give us what you need to give us in terms of foundation. But what I'm really interested in is like you've gone from 1 to nearly 20 in 18 months. What happened? And it sounds to me like you've done it in a bit more kind of intentional, proactive way than Mark with Man Walk, where he went from 1 to like 70 and didn't quite know what was happening. There was a viralness, whereas I think yours is a more sort of intentional growth. Not that one's better than the other, but there's a difference there that I think would be interesting to hear about.
Sure. Look, we've got our speeches kind of down pat. We kind of tell the story quite often. So I'm going to very quickly hop back into Tom's thing. I happen to be at a bit of a get together for a lot of mental health professionals, and they were talking about a specific subject, loneliness. And I happened to talk about the new father. And I talked about the new father, and I tell you, that conversation was shut down pretty damn quickly, because it's, what about the mothers? Well, it's all about the mothers, isn't it? So it was, I just want to underline that. So the men's table. So in early 2011, I was feeling pretty shit, pretty depressed. I've been through a very difficult divorce. Self-employment was going pretty badly because of everything that was going on for me. Throughout my life, I'd probably been fairly depressed, up and down, looking back, and depression is often something you can only see when you look back at it, when you're starting to come out of it. That's often a realization. So I was a member of a business networking group, and at the end of that group, I was talking to two of the guys there, and I said, guys, I just feel like shit. I feel terrible. This is going on for me. I'm depressed, the ex-wife, I'm worried about my son, all those kind of things. They just turned around to me and said exactly the same thing. And they said, wow, we know exactly how you feel because we feel the same way. And in that kind of moment, because I always wear my heart on my sleeve and know exactly how I feel, I realized that I'd open the door for them to walk through and tell me how I felt. And because I'd lost all the, the armor and all that, I just went, bleh. And they felt very comfortable for me to actually listen to what they had to say as well. So the next week I stood up at the same networking group and said, guys, I'm starting a men's group, who's in? And our first meeting was actually this month, 9 years ago. So on the third Wednesday of the month, and we have met every single month since then on the third Wednesday of every month. We found a private room in a restaurant in Surrey Hills, and we went upstairs. We started talking about our stuff, what was going on for us. I facilitated the first table, I don't know, probably for about a year. It feels like 3 years, but it was probably for about a year. And then I wanted to step back and make it a level playing field to get everybody involved, because I wasn't getting what I wanted from the group because I was just facilitating all the time. So we mixed it up and we had different facilitators going around the table. It turned out that some people were just shit facilitators. It turned out that some people just didn't want to facilitate, and other people were great facilitators. And since that day, we've got 11 of the original 12 men who still meet for a meal every third Wednesday. We now go to various people's homes. The restaurant closed, so we actually go to each other's homes. And we start at 7 o'clock sharp. Very important that we start exactly on time, because we have men who've been bursting to tell their story. Something terrible has happened and they want to start saying it at 7 o'clock. somebody waltzes in at 7:15 and goes, "Oh, fuck, the traffic was terrible," that guy's lost his opportunity to talk about what's going on for him. And we finish up at around about 9 o'clock. We encourage men not to kick on. Finishing up around about 9 o'clock is a decent time. We've pretty much got, am I getting a bit of the sunshine in there? We've pretty much got photographs of every single meeting we've had and how we get old together. And at the beginning of last year, David gave me a call and said he'd been provoked to think about men's work by a woman who was doing women's work. Knew I was really interested in having kind of started the men's table. What were you going to do about it? So, David, do you want to kind of carry on from there?
Yeah, no worries, Ben. Thanks. And just great to hear all these stories, by the way. Awesome work that you guys are doing, and it's really lovely to be part of this this conversation. If it's okay, I might just share a screen very briefly, just to put up a couple of things as well as we talk. I think that should come up. I'll just start briefly with my own story about our starting table, and then move on to where Ben's just left off about stepping into opening other tables. So Ben stood up and said he wanted to do a men's table. I just think I had an instinctive yes to it. And I don't think I was very conscious about what drew me to it. But looking back, I think, and now that I've had a chance to hear so many men who come to tables talk about, why did they come? And I can see a couple of things. I mean, one is I think I had a real awkwardness around my relationships with most other men. I was a smaller guy at high school. So even though I loved sport and played AFL, I was in Adelaide, I still wasn't part of the blokey bloke group, I think. And I felt probably a bit of shame around that. And I think there was some other shame I picked up from my father around stuff as well. So I think I just never really felt like I let myself open to a lot of guys, even though I had a lot of friends and so on. But the second thing I only just realized actually, as I was sitting here listening to some of these stories, when I was in year 12, I formed a really good friendship. Just for that 1 year, I didn't really hang out with this guy before, Brenton. And he and I would, at a party, would just pull up a couple of chairs off to the side somewhere and have a D&M and a Deep and Meaningful. And I think ever since then, I've always appreciated talking about what's really going on, and the small talk doesn't really do it for me. And I think maybe I instinctively had a sense that there was an opportunity to step into a different kind of way of relating when the invitation came up. And then I think it was only a few months in, and here was a bunch of guys getting to know each other a bit better. And probably our most kind of blokey bloke at our table, he was asked a question. That the whole theme that night had been talking around parenting, and most of us had kids. And I really clumsily just turned to this guy and said, "You don't have kids, do you?" And it was kind of an innocent question, but man, oh man, he really dropped his guard, and he dropped his head, and his bottom lip started to quiver, and he had tears in his eyes, and he talked about how he couldn't have kids even though he really wanted to. And even just thinking about it now just makes me feel really moved by that share, because I think at that point, I just thought, wow, this is real. Like this is a place where we can really get real with each other and talk about what's really going on. So that really cemented, I think, what I saw was possible. So fast forwarding to where Ben left off, and what we did when we first started, and I'll just show you this photo. Here's our founding table. This is probably about 1.5 years ago. So some of us have lost a bit of weight. Some of us have gained a bit of weight since then. And we already had one guy, he's down in Launceston, he moved down there, he's in Skype in the middle of the screen there. So he was already virtually connecting in before we all had to go to COVID. Anyway, we sat down with our guys and we said, Ben and I want to take this out. What have we been doing that's made this work? Let's write it down. And we got their points down about the things that had happened. And we'd had some conflict in our group, because you'd get together for 8 years at that point, almost 8 years. And, you're going to bump into each other's rough edges a bit, which we had. So we'd learned the hard way, but we'd also learned about how do you make this really stay alive and fresh and real. And it was about the conversation. So we came up with this thing called the fundamentals. And this is just a bit of a snapshot of it. And, you know, there's pretty obvious stuff here about just talking about feelings and sharing from the heart. You know, you probably know a lot of guys are happy to talk about the story, but when it comes to how do you really feel, a lot of men aren't very practiced at that. And we saw that in our table. The idea of no fixing is one that really jumps out for a lot of guys, because someone puts their heart on their sleeve or says something that's going on for them. And that instinct is there for so many guys to want to get in and fix. But in the commitment section in the fundamentals, where we show this to other guys, when Ben and I were first talking about this, I had a real epiphany. And I said to him, you know, I've only made a commitment to growing old twice in my life, growing old with some other people twice in my life. Once was to my wife, and, you know, thank God I'm still happily married after 27 years. But the other was to this group of men, because about a year and a half or 2 years in, we can't quite remember, we'd cemented you know, we'd been going along every month, and we said, are we doing this, you know, are we messing around with this? Is this a part-time thing, or are we doing this for the long term? And at that point, we made this commitment to each other to grow old together. And we also had realized that it was about community. So I think the first thing I want to share in response to your second question, Glenn, is just writing down a few of the things that had worked for us has been the key thing to help it spread. So when we share the fundamentals, it really allows other guys to see how it can work. But I wanted to disagree too with what Barry was saying before in the last call. And I think Alan picked up on this idea that sometimes blokes won't go into those real conversations. And we've always been really upfront that the men's table is a place where you do talk about what's really going on. That's the actual invitation and the purpose of it. So some of the other groups we think are doing a fantastic job to get guys together. And so the men's table we know isn't for everyone, because not everyone's willing to come along and really, you know, kind of bare their soul. Not that they're forced to. Everyone's got a choice about whether they share or not. But it's really clear that this is a place where you get to talk about what's really going on and how you feel. I'll just say one more thing, and Ben might want to add anything else about what's helped it to grow.
You got 1 minute between you guys, so
okay, no worries. We had a guy come along really early and say, you know, I've got mates, but we only talk about footy and shit. And we realised that there is this sort of limitation of where the depth goes to with a lot of relationships. And so our kind of, you know, one of our taglines is we don't just talk about footy and shit. It's a place to be real with each other. So that has appealed to certain guys who are looking for that authentic connection. So Ben, I don't know if you want to add anything about that.
I think
David,
we're conscious of time, so yeah.
Yep.
Sorry, just 20 seconds, just with David, because you were the one that messaged me during Barry's conversation. Was that?
No, it wasn't.
Ah, there was another David that messaged me exactly that same thing about that. Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
Right.
Sorry, Ben.
No, all good.
excellent. Yeah, there's a really all of it is really rich. There's just one small point I want to pick out of what you've just said, is that, you know, there's often been these sort of almost like two separate or competing fields of men's work. One is which we meet blokes where they are. We don't try and change blokes. We don't see blokes as a problem. We build on blokes' strengths and that's it. And if we do that, we can reach them and we can deliver what we want to deliver. And the other one is, it's like, you know, we need to change blokes and help blokes grow and evolve and all the rest of it. And they're often seen as being in conflict. In simple terms, you know, a strengths-based approach versus a more kind of critical of masculinity approach. And yet, to me, there's actually a really powerful overlap. It's like some people grow faster than others, but no one goes through life without growing and changing and evolving. You know, you can't go through the different decades and not change and grow. You can't go through fatherhood and relationships without growing and evolving, and then going through loss and success and all the different things we go through as men and as human beings without changing. Just some of us do it faster than others, and some of us do it more consciously than others. And so for me, the sweet spot of men's work is where we can do both, where we can both meet men where they are and build on men's existing strengths and what works for men, but also allow the space for growth to emerge. And if you can find that spot, then that's where the magic happens. And if you can create an ongoing relationship and community to support that, which is obviously, you know, what you've alluded to, that the long-term commitment of a table, that's really powerful.
Can I just very quickly add to that? Men don't have to talk. They can just come along. If they don't want to talk, they don't want to talk. But I tell you what, if they come along and they just listen, a man who's telling his story feels heard.
Yeah, and also blokes will get benefit out of sitting in the circle and not talking. They'll feel 1,000 times better at the end of that 2 hours. They'll feel a different person, even though they've said nothing, which is something about the magic of sitting in circles. Well, I see that in the separated dads groups I work with. It's something we referred to yesterday with the older men's groups and some guys who didn't speak for 6 months almost, groups that were running in older men's setting, in aged care settings. So yeah, it was really interesting, powerful stuff. So look, we got part way with Mark's story from Man Walk. We're just going to adapt a little bit here because Man Walk went viral. We got as far as Wollongong today, tomorrow the world. We kind of know that it went from 1 to like exploded to 70. And one of the ways it exploded to 70, and this is the same for any organization that's relying on sort of like, you know, various groups, is that people around the country started setting groups up. So I'm going to ask Chris Leitus just to briefly explain who he is, because Chris runs one of the runs Man Walk down in Victoria. So he can speak a little bit about what's happening with Man Walk from the organizational perspective, but also he can speak from the perspective of why did he take it on? You know, what was it about? You know, you're trying to grow things from the middle or from the top, but what is it about a particular approach that makes it easy for you to, or desirable for you to take it on and spread someone else's model or idea? So Chris, are you there?
Yep, sure am. Sorry, mate. Really, to Sean's point earlier, he wanted a dad joke. So Burnsy's asked me to put my Man Walk hat on. So I've now gone and done that. There we go. That's the dad joke over and done with.
Yeah, so I'm going to give you, Chris, about 3 or 4 minutes just to, sort of, you know, who you are and your, you know, why did you take on Man Walk and a little bit of that.
Yep, no, too easy. So Mark's flicked me a few points that he wanted to cover off. So I'm going to talk probably to the vision of what the Man Walk's all about. And our vision is very simple. It's connecting men and strengthening community. And the way we do this really across the country is we remove any barriers associated with joining a walk. It's very easy to do. And we're non-confronting. You know, a few of the points earlier, that there's no requirement for our blokes to talk if they don't want to. We remove the barriers by being totally inclusive, and what we don't do is we don't take any details of our men. To join a Man Walk, it's either on the website, and then from there you join one of the private groups, and that is literally the only contact that we have with our blokes. So all the messaging that we do, all the communication that we do, is done through the Facebook private groups that we've got set up, and we encourage the guys to engage within that. What we also try and do here is build social capital, for use of better terms. So both within our communities, but then also with neighbouring communities as well. And a point in case is down here in Geelong. We started July last year. I think it was. We're about to turn 1, I think, on July the 18th or thereabouts. Our first morning, it was 2 degrees and it was raining sideways, and we had 10 blokes turn up and walk 4Ks with us. So we kind of figured from there that we had something pretty good going. About 5 weeks later, we were talking to a few of what had become regular guys. They were based in Torquay, and 2 weeks later we set up Man Walk Torquay, and they've now been running since about August last year as well. So the aim here, certainly within Geelong and the Surf Coast, is, you know, if we can get half a dozen Man Walks going, you know, over the next 12 months, it then gives us a really good social network of blokes around the region. We've got a saying down here, everything's 20 minutes away. from Geelong. So, you know, if we can get half a dozen walks within 20 minutes of each other, then we're doing pretty well. We find with Man Walk, our blokes come from diverse backgrounds. Shift workers, blue collar, white collar, dads that are co-parenting. So they'll have the kids one weekend. Suddenly they've got a really broad social network, but then those off weekends, their social network shrinks to nothing. And so they come and utilise us on a Saturday morning. We walk on a Saturday in July and on a Wednesday night. But we find on a Saturday morning, we'll have those blokes join us every other week because it A, gives them an opportunity to get up and get out of the house on Saturday morning. And then B, it gives them some adult conversation as well. And, you know, and from there now, we've seen a few of them have built pretty good friendships and, you know, are regularly now sort of connecting with each other during the week. There'll be a random post on a Tuesday saying, hey, I've got a day off, anyone free for a coffee? And they'll catch up. So the idea behind it, and with that obviously comes huge life experience. You know, our youngest in Geelong is 17 and our oldest is 82. And then we've got everything in between from there. The simplicity behind the Man Walk can't be underestimated. You know, walk, talk, support is the ethos behind it, and that is literally what it is. We walk regardless of where we are around the country. It is the same time and the same day of week for each individual walk. So, you know, so Barrel, for example, you know, might be on a Friday morning, and that's the same time they walk every single week. Because we know with that it builds habit, and once we build habit, habit's very hard to break, and it further just entrenches that connection. And it also makes it less confusing. So if one of our Man Walkers is talking to mates about it, when do you walk? Oh, we walk on a Saturday morning and here's where we meet. And it's the same meeting spot, it's the same route every single week without fail. One of the things we had to do very quickly within, I suppose, you know, Man Walk Inc., once the restrictions came in, was come up with an alternative. How do we keep these guys connected when they can't socially connect? So we all, well, a vast majority of us moved to Zoom very quickly. So in Geelong, we've been operating Zoom twice a week. We've kept our Wednesday night, Saturday morning routine via Zoom, and that's been invaluable. And we've actually got a lot more out of that because the boys have been comfortable. They've been in their houses and their couches and their man caves, wherever they were, and they've just been more open for a chat. We've been fortunate here in Victoria. We've now just reopened the ability to be able to walk. So this morning we had 13 blokes join us on Saturday morning. And we're expecting that now to grow as we start getting back into that regular routine.
Okay, Chris, it's fantastic.
Yep.
I'm going to need to jump in for time, but I've just got one question for you. Looking from the perspective of like a local organizer, what was it that made you take on being a Man Walk pioneer or champion, whatever the right word is?
Just the sheer simplicity of it. You know, it's 45 minutes to an hour, twice a week, whatever you can facilitate. And for me, and I think if you talk to a lot of our men, it is just that ability to have the simple art of human and social connection.
Yeah. Do you get more out of it than you put in? It's a slightly loaded question, but
yeah, you know what, I do. It very much so. Every walk that I do, my cup is full when I walk out of it. Very much so. It gives me a huge amount of satisfaction and relief, both mentally as well. Yeah.
Great. Well, thanks for jumping in. Appreciate Mark, president of the Man Walk, has been having some issues with connectivity. Really great getting your perspective there, but also I know Mark's feeding you some lines in the background as well to make sure you're on Man Walk message. So look, I'm going to do one last round of questions. It's going to be quite short, and I'm going to set you a challenge to our panel. I didn't warn you on this one. I just think it's what I'd like to hear right now. We've had some really interesting exploration, and I'm going to ask you, and I'll give you a little moment to think about it. Mitch, I'm going to come to you first, so you've got to think the fastest, right? So what 3 things are the things that you need to grow? Looking back, what are the 3 things that enabled you to grow from where you were to where you are now? The 3 biggest factors, or the 3 big things you need to grow to the next stage, whatever the next stage is.
Yeah, right.
We're looking for 3 big things, right? I'll buy you a bit of time, Mitch. So we're going to come to Mitch and to Tom, and then to men's table and to man walk last, to give them time to communicate behind the scenes. And I also just want to say, I don't know if you can hear us, Chris Sagalas, but I want to say hi. It's great to see you here, Chris. How are you, my friend? We can't hear you. If you want to try unmuting and say hello, that's okay. If not, it doesn't matter. No. He's talking, but we can't see you. But
Better?
Yes. Go ahead.
Oh, good. Good. Yeah, long time and me shared and work and same stories and very bad, and thank God, and virus and shut down and open and real well. Hey, yeah.
Thanks for being here, Chris. It's great to see you. You're a bit of a legend in the men's lads movement.
You too, Paul.
Chris,
thank you.
Do you mind if I?
Glenn, thanks.
Oh, you're welcome. Do you mind if I just share a link to your story? I've got a story here on Southwest Voice, so people know a little bit about your story. Chris?
Yeah, no, sorry. Me. Okay. Oh, yeah, sorry. So, yeah, all good. New South Wales City, and yeah, all good. Yeah, all good.
Chris, I'm just gonna share a story about you that I saw in a newspaper. Is that
yes.
Is that okay? Yeah.
Yeah, long time, and yeah, wife and girls and home and are real and life and yeah, true. Yeah, true. Newspaper, lots of stories and I tell well and life. Hey, yeah, true. Brain injury and yeah, true. Stroke, yeah, very yeah, I relate. So, better. Better.
Yeah. Oh, thanks for being here, Chris. Really delighted that you can make it online and join us today, and looking forward to seeing you again in face to face, maybe maybe conference.
Yes. Very long time. Yeah,
long time.
So just sit there.
Good.
Sit there.
Yeah, so I just posted Chris's story in case you've not heard of Chris and heard a little bit of his background. Really great to see him. I know he gets, I don't want to speak on his behalf, but I just will say, from what I know he gets a lot of value out of the men's sheds movement.
Yes. Very good. I like it, men's shed and lots of people, group and talking, barbecues and talking, meeting tools and haban and nails and dust and lots of people and well, that's something to do. Hey, something health. Yeah, true.
Good. Thank you, Chris. Going to go back to my panelists now.
Time, mate. Time. Yeah, true. You too. All good. All good. Good man. Yeah, you too. Thank you.
Good man, Chris.
You too.
Okay. So, lovely to see Chris. I love our men's health movement. It's just a great big family to me of gorgeous people all around the country. And every time I have an event, part of an event like this, I always see people I've not seen for a long time, and it just opens my heart. And I have so much love for the many different people in this gorgeous movement of ours. I feel such a part of a great big family. So how do we grow it so more men can enjoy the benefits? So I tell you how, because we've got some great panelists who are going to give you the 3 key things we need. So Mitch, hope that's given you you had enough time to really come up with the words of the 3 bullet points. Over to you.
I did. I got more time than I thought I was going to get, so that was good. Can I say first, I love the no fixing from the men's table. I just think that that's for blokes especially. I know you have so many conversations with young boys and stuff at school, and even girls, and they think that they have to fix the problems of the people that open up to them. And I just really love that concept, that to remind people that you just don't have to do that. So I think it's really important. My three things, whether I'm on the money to what you were after, Glenn, or not. Three things that I feel I need to continue doing what we do now. Is that right?
Yeah, or the three things that have made the difference to get you here, but however you want to answer it.
Yeah, so I think the first thing I wrote was I need to continue to be a leader that listens. So I'm kind of seen in our community, I suppose, across our state as a leader in the space of advocating around positive mental health. And I've always really prided myself on listening to what other people have to say in terms of our organisation. As I said, it was just Mitch for a long time, but now there's so many other key people to this organisation. And I think to get where we've come, I had to listen. I think for us to grow, I have to continue to do that. I think that's really important. The other thing, the second one is stay true to my why. So I always thought that marketing experts were a load of rubbish, but I went and saw one early days, and she really pinned me down and said, find what your why is. And I've always really stayed true to that. And for me, I'm not going to go into what my why is, probably pretty obvious, but I always come back to that, and that helps me know who I need to work with, talk to, see, visit, have coffees with, network, etc. And the other thing I need, and which we've been fortunate to have, is community support. You know, we get government support, and there's all different types of major corporates that help, but community support and that real grassroots support from really small to medium groups all across Tasmania is really pivotal to our work and our name and the message being spread. So for us, I encourage people to find that community support, and when you get it, really don't let go of it, because it's super important to move forward. So they're my three.
Right, great job, Mitch. Awesome work. So, Mr. Tom Docking, Dad's Group, what have you got for us?
Thanks, Glenn. Yeah, three that I just came first to mind were empathy, awareness, and persistence. And I think empathy is around, I guess, what Mitch was saying around your why, and also listening, that key part of leadership and listening. You need to be able to walk in someone else's shoes and feel some of their pain to be able to continue to be genuine in what you're doing. And I think I've been guilty at times of racing off and chasing growth, and having to stop and go back and sit down and listen to one person and let that person move me. And, you know, sometimes to tears with the challenges that they're going through, and the I guess, the will to help them. I think that's really important. So then there's the awareness piece. So understanding what's going on outside of your key passion, and being aware of who needs it, and exactly what's the landscape you're trying to help in. Is it a landscape that's going to support you? And if it's not, where are you going to actually go? So be really, for me, it's being aware of what's the state government doing, what's the federal government doing, what's our local council doing, what are those community organisations out there, what are they doing? That plays into collaboration. I really feel that one thing we're particularly not good at as men is communicating. We're particularly not good at traditionally collaborating, and that's, you know, we're all guilty of that. And we're organisationally, we're not particularly good at collaborating either. If we were particularly good at collaborating, all of us would probably know each other really well and be collaborating with our programs. We're not at the moment. Some of us maybe are, some of us aren't. But Glenn, doing what we're doing now is the first step towards that, and being more aware of the fact that we're not great at collaborating as organisations is a good step towards being, you know, best in class at doing that. And the third one is persistence. There wouldn't be anyone here who hasn't had a rainy day where you've wanted to give up. And I normally say it's probably about once every 3 weeks or 3 months. Most of us want to give up these projects that we're doing, because whilst now's the time to talk about growth and the exciting explosions and fireworks in the sky, there's also those days where you're the one that needs the help. You're the one at the bottom of the barrel, dragging yourself out of bed, or dragging yourself, just sitting in the car, asking yourself, why the hell am I doing this? Because it's tough. And so, yeah, persistence, just keeps you there day in, day out, 6 years, 60 years later, helping people. And yeah, if you're not persistent, that's okay. It doesn't mean you've failed, but if you're wanting to grow, you need to be able to get whacked on the back a few times, whacked in the face a few times, and then pick yourself up and keep going. And if you're going forward with empathy and awareness, then you will keep going. But if you've lost empathy and awareness, then you get to go back and work on those things.
Nice, really beautifully tied together, Tom, and good to hear I'm not the only one who thinks about giving up on a regular basis. But still here. So we said, now listen, men's table. Now I'm trying to be democratic here. You don't get 6 points. You've got to work out a way between you to synthesize your thoughts.
Well, maybe we'll just do real quick each one, but that's the beauty of the diversity of working with someone who's wired up very differently, is we get to see things differently and spar off each other. So in terms of that collaboration, Tom, I think we're really seeing the power of that. Very quickly, minus safety, structure and serving. The safety, we just researched men at tables. 95% of them said it's a safe space to share and be heard. That allows them to feel, obviously, they can be open. The structure comes from the fundamentals in our case. In other cases, it'll be whatever your program is, but just enough to hold it. And then serving. Men want to be part of a community. Men want to give. So tapping into that, the idea of men serving men. Over to Ben for our other half of time.
Very quickly, passion. I used to do something else until the beginning of last year, but once you get into men's work, man, passion is right there. It's so important. Never lose the fire, even on those rainy days. Empathy, listen to every man that talks to you. And vision. How big can this be? If this thing is huge, how many men are we going to help through that? My fourth point, which came up when I saw David's points, is what has really helped us is a partnership. Like David and I are yin and yang. We're very, very different people, but it just works really well. I piss him off, he pisses me off, but we have very, very different skills. So it works really well. So working with men can be like herding cats. We know that. They're not the most motivated. So if you've got somebody else you can bounce off, invaluable.
Wonderful. And you sneakily managed to get 7 points in there between. So we'll come to Chris or Mark. How have you managed, Chris, on behalf of...
Yep, all good. Yep, plenty of time to chat. 3 simple points. Be clear in our vision, connecting men, strengthening community, but more importantly, be particularly clear on what we don't do, and making sure that our ambassador network, and we are ambassadors, the lads that run the walks, are very clear on what we do and what we don't do, and keeping it very simple. Which then leads into making it simple for our blokes, because as blokes, we're a pretty simple beast, right? No cost, no joining, no paperwork, no need to talk, just turn up and come for a walk. It's as simple as that. And we don't try to complicate it any further than that. And then thirdly is keeping it regular. I talked earlier to the fact that everywhere across the Man Walk network, the number 1 rule is that you walk at the same time and on the same day of the week. And we do that on purpose. So it does continue to build that habit for the men to be able to, socially connect and form that community on a regular basis. And ideally what we want to be able to see through that connection is that, if you're going on a trip through to, central New South Wales, you'll jump on the Man Walk website and you'll figure out where your local walk is. You'll rock up and you go, "G'day, I'm Chris from Man Walk in Geelong."
Great, well done. You got through even with the technical difficulties. I'm a bit disappointed. I was expecting, $1 million, a famous celebrity ambassador, and a cloning machine so I can make 10 of me. But you all came up true to the men's movement. You all came up with internal values that actually you can bring to the situation, not relying on external factors like loads of money and a celebrity ambassador and all the rest of it. So to try and synthesize what you've given us, I think obviously vision, and you've all had a vision, right? Or else if you don't have a vision, you don't go and set something up. You've empathy and listening, wasn't that a big part of what you all came up with. So, you know, we hear a lot about we need to get men talking. You guys focus so much on listening, which is the important other half of talking. You talked about support in different ways, whether that was like community support, or whether that was collaborating or building partnership. And you also talked about persistence and commitment and regularity. And I think there's a lot to take from that, because not all of us can get heaps of funding or get that sort of viral media story, but we can all bring, you know, vision, empathy, collaboration, commitment to whatever we do. So it's been really inspiring hearing your stories. We've gone over time, but if you don't mind hanging around just a little bit, if none of you have to dash out before sort of 3:30, which is when the final session starts, I'd love you to stick around just for a few more minutes, and I'd love to hear from, so, you know, usual deal, guys. If you want to share something here, ask a question, make an observation. So you go to the participants button at the bottom of the Zoom window, click on there, and you can raise a hand. And if you raise a hand using the Zoom button, I'll see you, and we'll get you to say a few words. And if there's no one wants to do that, I'll look at those that are using the old-fashioned form of waving, such as Greg Milan. You have to unmute yourself, Greg.
Yeah, just a comment. I was out for a while. I'm in the last half an hour of this session, and I'm just picking up on someone's point. I think it was Thomas from Dad's group. And I think, I don't want to get this wrong, but I was thinking, Thomas, that you were saying that there's not a lot of collaboration between different projects and different men's things that are happening. This is really interesting, because yesterday we focused on older men, and I did a session in the afternoon about what works for older men. The people in the room there were, like me, been in the men's health area for 30 years, sometimes 40 years. We're the older group, and one of the things that they said was, isn't it great that we're not competitive with each other, and that we share resources and we share projects and things? And we do. We share everything we've got. And then your comment kind of resonated with me, because you were coming at this from a different way. And what I think's happening here, I'm just guessing, is that our fantastic younger workers like yourself, that are in this session doing new projects and new work, there might not be that collaboration going on. So I think it might be a generational kind of thing. But there's a hugely important role for AMHF in this. And where we head after this event is some strategic planning and developing a knowledge hub, for want of a better word, where people can share, and everyone can share. The projects that have been around for a long time, like Men's Sheds and myself and guys like you. Yes, I think we're going to create that space where we can really do the collaboration really, really well. So thanks for that comment. It really resonated with me that, yeah, for a lot of these great projects, every time we get together, I hear about projects I've never heard of before. So there's a groundswell of movement that's happening, and AMHF's got a really key role in pulling that all together. So thanks.
Thanks, Rick. I appreciate that. I'll just make a contextual statement about where I was coming from, because I've just finished up doing a roundtable around fatherhood and nationally looking at things. And I guess the point there was that a lot of people are doing really great projects at a kind of a large organisational level, like St Vincent's or Anglicare and various major organisations helping various targeted population groups. Yet the collaboration at that level and from a federal government policy level, it doesn't, there is a competitive nature to grant funding, for example, there's not a the one thing that I'm trying to push for is for governments to have an incentivised collaboration inside the grants they provide. So, for example, Man Walk gets gets funding, but then a portion of that funding is contingent on them collaborating with 3 other organisations in that space together to achieve their strategic outcomes. That's something we've never seen before from a government policy, and that's something that I hope we could push towards in the next 10 years. You're absolutely right, collaboration happens, and that's the reason why we can enjoy these amazing programs, specifically because of sharing of resources. But it's across that more national, federal and state government perspective where we haven't seen that encouraged from a top-down perspective. And so out of context, sorry, I probably might have sounded like we're not doing what we're doing, but there is,
sounds good.
Matt, Thomas, I'm just going to jump in. Thanks, Greg. Thanks, Tom. I want to say thank you now to all our speakers in case any of you have to go. So a big thank you to Mitch at Speak Up Stay Chatty, to Ben and David at Men's Table, to the wonderful Tom Docking at Dad's Group, to Mark Burns and to Chris Lightus, who did the whole man walk thing between them. You're all bloody awesome. Keep doing what you're doing. Keep growing. I'll keep this conversation going for a few more minutes, but if you have to dash, that's okay. Give us a wave goodbye, and we'll see you next time around, whatever that is. Just want to pick up on that point that you guys have just been talking about, because Tom, you make the way you articulate that point is really helpful. It's not just about how we operate as men and as men's groups being competitive or not collaborative. I mean, some of it is simply just about not having the time and resource to do our own thing, let alone give time to working together. But it's also the environment that we create, that we operate in. And in the policy space, there's a model that says there's like 3 ways of doing policy, which is authoritative, competitive and collaborative. And everyone agrees that the collaborative approach is the best way and the most effective way, but it also takes time and it's the most difficult. And so often you go for the authoritative approach where you just go, right, okay, we've got this big issue. I mean, mental health is a classic one. We saw like $1 billion of mental health funding distributed in the last couple of months because of COVID-19. Majority of it went to like big, large, centralized organizations. They're the authority, give it to them, let them get on with it. The next way is where you open up the market a little bit and you make it competitive by actually having some scarce resource that people can go for. Men's health strategy, fine example. First bit of funding that came out of that was like, I don't know, about $1 million of funding for men's health promotion projects, and anyone could apply. So you create this competitive environment where we're all fighting over scarce resources. The collaborative approach is, that is the gold standard, and we can't just wait for government to enable it. We need to find ways of actually growing it together ourselves. I strongly believe that if we grow our sector together, wherever we get our resources from, whether that's private sector, public donation, or the government, if we grow a bigger sector, it doesn't matter if we've got 5% of it or 10% of it. If there's a bigger sector, we all thrive and we all benefit. And so I'm for collaboration, and that's why we have events like this. Sean.
Yeah, just on the collaboration, because that was part of my motivation to get into this community, was seeing that as an opportunity. And I think with the collaboration, and I think Tom spoke on it about how just doing Dad's Group, he has, he ticks off a couple of boxes. And I think it's what's kind of needed, or the opportunity, is the structure of saying, where do we all fit? And then how can we help kind of like switch up? Because if it's someone dealing with loneliness, well, then they can deal with the Men's Table and Dad's Group, and then Dad's Group can deal with mental health, but then also maybe relationships, and collaborate with that. So we're all getting value and giving value to each other's, and subsequently growing each individual's group to a larger bit. So I think it's a good opportunity.